Welcome for another episode of Coffee with Doc. Now, most of you don't know that I don't have coffee in here because we're doing this after 10 o'clock in the morning, and I can't have caffeine after 10 o'clock in the morning. So it's just water for Doc. Anyway, episode 40. I have somebody I've been working with for, oh, I'm going to go back and probably since 2009, 2010. So a good
It's about that.
15, 16 years, right? Jeremy Unara. And I probably don't say your last name correctly.
Nobody does, so it's okay.
All right. Very difficult to say his last name. But Jeremy is in the nutraceutical supplement industry, super knowledgeable. I mean, the first time I met him, when I had hair, he blew my hair back with his knowledge. And we've maintained a great relationship ever since then. So I brought Jeremy on to really help everybody understand what makes a good supplement company, what are things to look for, what are some pitfalls out there, those types of things, more like a public service announcement. But I like to start off with kind of learning a little bit more about Jeremy as a human being. So, and I know a little bit, but I'm going to learn a little bit more. So
I appreciate that.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up on a farm in Wisconsin, of
Okay.
all places. So
Oh.
I had an amazing, childhood and growing up, learning the value of hard work. I always tease my kids. My kids are still young, but I grew up picking rocks and shoveling cow, what, and
Manure.
manure, climbing silos, baling hay. These are my first jobs, right? And I also was driving a tractor when I was like 9 years old, and driving my dad's truck in the field when I was 11. So it's perspective. My sons are 11 and 9. So the thought of them driving a truck would freak me out. But when you grow up on a farm, you learn how to, carry your weight really early. And it's
Right.
a very difficult thing to be a farmer. But my dad took over my grandpa's farm when he passed unexpectedly. And he ran it with my uncle till we were about 12. It was just a dairy farm. So they milked cows. They had about 100 head of cattle. And when you go back today to that same place, the farms still exist, but nobody's actually milking cows anymore.
What are they using it for?
Well, they're desolate primarily.
Oh, really?
But because it's all big conglomerates now, right? So there's like one farm took over all the cows or had 5,000 head of cattle, just massive corporations, if you will.
Okay.
But the small dairy farms are kind of a thing of the past, at least
Really?
where I grew up. So
It's funny. We have that in common. My grandfather had a dairy farm, and then my dad worked for him long before I was born. And then my mother's sister, her and her husband took it over from my grandfather. And we'd go out there when I was a little kid and, look at cows,
it's a generational thing, right?
Yeah.
You pass it along, and at some point it either dissolves or you keep it going. And then if you do keep it going, it's probably it's a different version of what it once was.
Yeah. Well, I think it dissolved shortly after my uncle passed away, and then I don't think his kids were interested in it. And it's a dysfunctional family, so we never know exactly what happened. But that's pretty cool. And I didn't grow up on the farm. I would just go out there and visit. He was basically a city boy. I remember going out. My niece married a farmer, and I'd go hang out with him, and he'd send me up into the loft, and he's like, "Hey, throw me down a bale of hay." And I threw him down some. He goes, "Hey, goddamn city boy, this is straw." I'm like, well, "What's the difference?" He goes, "Cows can't eat this." I was like, "Okay, right. Get the green stuff." Okay. It looked the same to me. I didn't know any better. So growing up in Wisconsin, and you went to high school there, played high school football.
Yeah, I was a 3-sport guy. Where I grew up, we didn't have club sports. There wasn't enough kids. We didn't have Pop Warner football because there wasn't enough kids. We didn't have soccer growing up. There wasn't enough kids. So I grew up in the country, right? So I was probably 45 minutes north of Milwaukee, 50 minutes north. And so we played sports. We played whatever sport was in season, right? Mm-hmm. So I played baseball when it was spring, and I played football in the fall, and I played basketball in the summer. And I was an all-state athlete in all 3 sports.
Oh, right.
And I was a well-rounded athlete because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Today it's different, right? The kids, even, my kids aren't there yet, but it's super competitive. Everybody specializes. People are getting speed coaches when they're 12, and I don't know how I feel about it.
I think it's a mistake. And I think science supports it, that it's a mistake.
I do feel the same way. I do feel like there is even as a parent who came up differently, I feel like there's a pull to do stuff like that, though, because you want your kid to be in that sport. And fortunately for me, where I grew up, it wasn't extremely competitive. So if you wanted to play football, you played football.
Right.
And no, whether you played and excelled is a different story, but you played and
But
you
you
were
have to
on the
play.
team. And I always tell this story because my freshman year, so I played quarterback and I played defensive back my whole 4 years in football. And the freshman year, the coach said, "Hey, who wants to play quarterback?" And three of us raised our hand. And he said, "Throw the ball." And I threw the ball. The other kids
Further.
threw the ball. And you're the quarterback.
Okay.
That's how I became the quarterback. So obviously that looks much different today. Kids are starting to play quarterback when they're 9 and they're like taking quarterback lessons. And so it's just different. And there's a simplicity to it, which I'm very grateful for today. My entire childhood is sort of viewed upon as just like this very basic, simple life. I didn't have a lot of stressors. We never had a ton of money, but we had everything we needed.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's
You
very
just,
simple.
yeah.
So I live in Orange County, California today, so it's a little different. It's very competitive there. But yeah, then I decided we had a really good senior season my last year, and I decided to pursue football. My basketball was probably my favorite sport, and I ended up going to a small school. Playing football wasn't a priority for me. It had a good program, which I was going to get into for finance. And then as I excelled and I put on 35 pounds of muscle in the first 2 years, because I never touched a weight before,
Oh, wow.
I became a different type of athlete. And then I was able to parlay that into, getting signed by the Green Bay Packers and kind of taking on my professional journey. But a small school kid that just kind of like fought its way naively into that world. And I probably wasn't quite prepared for it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's an awesome way to kind of come up that way.
Yeah, man, that's a hell of a story. I mean, not enough kids to really fill the team, and the next thing you know, you're playing for the Packers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and a Wisconsin boy, so
Yeah.
that had to be surreal.
It
Like,
was,
right?
it was, and I would say, thinking back on it, I wasn't cognizant enough to even understand the gravity of it all, right? I just was like, I had 3 opportunities. So when you go to a small school, you don't necessarily go to a combine, right?
Right.
You just have people work you out. So I had 3 teams work me out. All 3 of them wanted to sign me after the draft. And I chose to go to Green Bay, partly because I was a homegrown kid. But if I would have taken a step back and looked at the rosters on those other teams, I probably would have had a much better opportunity long term.
I see.
Because they were younger squads.
Okay.
Green Bay is traditionally known. They draft very well. They nurture internally. They don't. They were a playoff team at the time. They had a very robust secondary, all pros, etc. So you just make an emotional decision.
Yeah.
You don't really make a logical one. But that starts your journey, and you figure it out, and you learn real quick, right? Small town kid, never was really challenged in any way, and you have to sink or swim.
Right.
And so I was able to do both, but I was able to parlay that into a 10-year professional career in different leagues and find my way around that world. And probably is because I kind of played with a chip on my shoulder all the time.
Yeah.
I was a small town kid. I was always told you can't do it. And I kind of said to myself, I'm going to show them I can do it.
Hold my beer. Watch this.
That's right.
Beautiful. Right. Well, then, and that's just a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah,
I knew kind of the end part of it. I didn't know all of the other stuff. So.
Yeah, there's a lot more to unpack there.
Yeah, I bet. We have to do that another time because I know you're on a time crunch. So I really want to get to what we came here to talk about. I just wanted to let people get to know you a little bit, right? And then
I appreciate that.
So you're in the supplement world, nutraceutical world, however we want to name that. You've been in it for how long now?
Yeah, I've been in it about 14 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wasn't far off.
Yeah, you're close.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because I know I've been we met initially. I remember, I think the first product that I tried was a natural antihistamine, and it worked spot on for me and a few other people. And I was like, all right, well, if this works, let's look at the rest of the stuff. And so, but with that, I know that the company you work for has very, very high standards. And because of that, you understand the pitfalls. I always tell people, you can go to GNC and you could have the world's greatest multivitamin on the shelf, and right next to it, the world's worst multivitamin, unless you know what you're looking for. And even sometimes, even if you do know what you're looking for, you might still get fooled and not know about it. And if you ask and I always, maybe insulting to the kids, working for GNC. But I said, you ask the zit-faced kid, on the other side of the counter, he doesn't know much about that stuff either. And he's just going to tell you which one's the most popular
Yeah.
in general terms. And so you might not end up with the best product. So, kind of what makes a good supplement? What are the kind of guidelines, parameters, or things that you think people should know?
Yeah, I would say what I would start with high level, big picture, without speaking to every single supplement company that exists out there in
Right.
retail, in the professional channel, et cetera. I've always functioned in a very professional space,
Yes.
working exclusively with clinicians and licensed providers. So you are able to sort of like say you hang your hat on a certain hat rack at some point in your existence, and then you say, we're going to service this customer, and this customer adheres to a high standard. It's easier to do the right things in that space, and it's easier to not do the right things in the larger space because
Right, because you're competing with a bunch of people that are spending more money in marketing than they are the product.
Yeah.
Right. And you can get lost and buried in that world.
Yeah. And I would say this, like this all starts with 1994. I think that's the correct date. DeShay, right, deregulated the supplement market, and that was a good thing for the supplement market. And if you see the trajectory of it, it went like this post 94, and it continues to grow right at a really good clip. And it's partly a benefit to the consumer, right, because they're able to get anything they want from, and we could create a product right now and bring it to market and get it out there. So it's a free market, if you will, right? We're one of very few countries, if not the only one, that doesn't require products to be registered in their respective countries. So we work in Canada as well. Canada has Health Canada. We have to register a product up there. It needs to get approved by Health Canada.
It's kind of like the FDA.
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
They're very particular about what gets into their marketplace. The United States it's deregulated. So in other words, like you don't have to do any of that, which makes it very difficult for the FDA to actually monitor it all. So there's a misnomer that our industry isn't regulated, and it is regulated. The FDA regulates our industry. We don't have FDA approved products. That's the difference.
Correct.
The FDA works. It's really their purview is drugs. That's what they're there for.
Right.
The supplement industry came on later on, but they're looking at phase 1, 2, 3 drug trials and like disease claims and structure claims and what is something is indicated for, how long does somebody have a patent for. That's what they care about.
Yeah.
And really what the only thing they care about in our world is if whether your product says it can do certain things that it can't.
So if you make claims.
That's right.
Right.
And that's where we're able to sort of stay in our lane really effectively. But in the greater market, it gets really tricky because if you don't have a platform to get your product out there, now with social media, you do. And it's very much clickbait, right? It's like, how do I articulate the value proposition of my product in a very quick manner because I only have the consumer for a split second.
Yeah.
And that creates a marketplace that's very noisy, that's out there. People are saying all kinds of stuff. So I would say if you take all that away and you strip all that and you say, like, what am I looking for as a consumer? Again, people can do whatever they want. That's the free market, right? But they also have to understand the fact that there's different qualities to different raw materials in the marketplace. There's thousands of raw materials that exist in the marketplace. Every one of them has different value propositions. And without a robust quality side of your organization, it's very difficult to discern what the quality is and what it isn't. As an example, most products that you find in the marketplace are created by contract manufacturers. That's a fact. So if you're in the retail market, you're working with a contract manufacturer. Generally speaking, it doesn't mean it's bad. That's all they do is make products for people. And generally speaking, those contract manufacturers are there to service the customer. So the customer says, make me XYZ, and they make XYZ. The customer may not even know what to actually do to create a robust stability program or quality product. They just tell the people to make it. They drive the unit cost down. They get it out there. They create a business model and they get it to you. The FDA only really cares about that when they are either saying something they shouldn't say about the product or the product is hurting people. Then you have to file adverse reaction reports with the FDA. But other than that, they just go out there in the marketplace and they sell.
Isn't there anything like the old truth in labeling kind of laws? Because I know that at one point in time, I can't remember how long ago, they were looking at supplements that they were taking off the shelves of drugstores. Like, let's just name Walgreens, and it may not have been them. And they were measuring, it was like supposed to be DHEA, and it's supposed to have 50 milligrams, and there was 10 milligrams in there. And so they kind of went after him a little bit because you're not telling the truth of what's in here.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Is
So there is truth in that. There are specific laws, if you will, the FDA has FDA labeling laws. If you look at like 21 CFR 111, this sort of impacts our the dietary supplement industry, and it requires you to choose two paths, generally speaking. So if you choose the path of a born on date, a manufactured date, you can do that. It's not illegal. It's less quality in many ways, but
okay.
it's a path you can choose, or you have to choose an expiration date. So if I'm a consumer, the first and foremost, the thing I'm looking for is I want something with an expiration date.
Okay.
Because if it has an expiration date, it means, generally speaking, without policing it from the beginning to end, that the company had to do a time zero stability test to ensure that what it says on the label is in the label.
Okay.
And then they have to, if they meet that expiration date, the product needs to meet it at expiration.
They have efficacy and
So they have to do stability testing to ensure that it meets that. So in our world, what that means is we'll do stability testing along the period of, let's say, 0 to 18 months, multiple time points to ensure to review the degradation of certain raw materials in there to make sure that we meet the label claim at that 18 months or 2 years or 1 year, whatever it may be. So expiration dates to me should be a bare minimum when you're looking at a product, and not all of them have them.
No.
And it's not illegal.
Right.
So if you find a born on date, it's all it means is they made that product, they did a time zero test, it had in there what they said it had in there. That's what they say.
Right.
And then they put it out in the marketplace. If you catch that product a year later, you don't know what's in it. They don't know what's in it because they haven't identified what's in it.
Because they didn't have to.
Yeah.
It was just a born on date.
That's right. So I would say that's, again, if I'm a consumer, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, if you're looking for certain raw materials, there's ways to find, trademark raw materials, generally speaking, can be a little bit better because they have some clinical efficacy documented with them. And you can find products in the consumer space that have trademark raw materials. The problem is even if they're using the dosage used in the clinical trial that aligns with it, it's highly, highly unlikely that they've done all of the due diligence on the quality side up front to ensure that they're giving you exactly what you think you're getting.
Okay.
And the greater problem with that is the FDA audits manufacturers. If you go to the manufacturing level, it should be, minimum CGMP, preferably NSF certified, TGA certified, if possible. That's Therapeutic Goods Association. That's like the highest level in manufacturing space. And that just is, these are all groups that audit these things. These are things you should look for as a consumer as well. But at the end of the day, and I say this, and it's very difficult for consumers to figure out what to do next. But the reality is there's a lot of self-policing. So when you're working with companies and you like a company, certainly identify the efficacy that you feel you're getting from the product, but also, do a little deep dive on the company. Because at the end of the day, the FDA is present, but they're not in every one of these places. They're not present all the time. It's very easy to cut corners. And the two easiest places to cut corners are cheaper raw materials and less testing.
Okay.
So if my goal is to get into the marketplace and create a product that drives down the unit cost, it's easy to do that. You can find corners to cut. And then at the end of the day, you're not going to get much out of the product. In the clinical space, what you're not going to get is an outcome, right? So to add on to that, you and I could come up with a product right now on a napkin. It may look good. And you say, hey, Jeremy, put glutathione in there, put CoQ10 in there, put NAC in there. Great on paper. Right. Now you get into the lab and you run it through the formulation scientist and they say, well, you know what? This CoQ10 doesn't match with this glutathione. When I mix it with this other raw material, it degrades this at 30% every 2 months. The point is that there's formulation science to this as well that most companies aren't doing.
So it sounds good, like you said, on paper, but it may be counteracting each other or something.
And there's a science to this for sure. If done at a high level, there's a lot of formulation science involved. It can be more complicated than people think. I've been through our manufacturing facility 20 times. And every time I go back, I learn something new. I'm more impressed with the way that we, our processes, our SOPs. And because you're in the industry longer, you know what questions to ask. And it's an impressive, impressive operation. And not every operation's like that. That's the point.
Yeah. I'm like a handful of questions now with just that diatribe that you had. Mm-hmm. So the first one is when you talk about like CMP or the higher level certification, right? I've heard that there was a certification for supplements that professional teams can use because you don't want, let's say a company makes DHEA, you don't want that DHEA to cross contaminate with this multivitamin, because if they have DHEA in their blood,
Sure.
that it looks like it came from an outside source. That's considered cheating because it's on the WADA banned list, right? So what is that?
Yeah, so I would say first and foremost, there's multiple entities now, but the first one that most people think about is NSF certified for sport.
Okay.
That's probably the most the most out there. There's informed consent or informed for sport. There's a bunch of different ones, right?
Okay.
And the point is exactly what you laid out, which is if I'm a professional athlete or I'm USADA, WADA tested, the anti-doping agency, like I just want to ensure that I am getting a product that doesn't have anything in it. At the end of the day, you're responsible for anything you put in your body as an athlete.
Right.
I know certain organizations, professional organizations, actually contractually obligate their athletes to only use products that are NSF certified.
Right.
I will say, if you're a high level quality manufacturer, you would not be mixing DHEA in the same room that you would mix something else like that in. So that's solvable for sure.
Right.
And, in addition to that, you would be doing the appropriate cleaning mechanisms to make sure that none of these cross contamination occurs. So, I mean, there's different levels to this. What I will say is it's also a bit of a marketing side of things, right? Because if you're a company that functions in the sports nutrition world, you may want to get an NSF certified for sport on your label.
Right.
But it's also costly. It's very costly. So you have to weigh the cost benefit of that.
Okay.
Because you have to run, it costs a lot. You have to move a lot of products. So it might make sense with one product, but it may not make sense for another. And I would just say, like, yeah, if you are a professional athlete in a league that forces you to do something like that, then you probably should do it. But I will say, as a company that does not do that, primarily because it's not the world we work in, we've considered it. We've looked at all the numbers. We still do all the testing. So that indicates that things are free of these contaminants. And as an example is we just launched a creatine. I know we're 20 years short.
It doesn't matter. It's amazing. I'll tell you first. So, and folks, I'm going to just tell you with creatine he's talking about, we carry it here because you get a freaking jug and it's not ridiculously expensive.
It's very,
I can't remember. I think it's 90 servings.
It's 90 servings, 5 grams.
And it's inexpensive and excellent quality because I have my wife taking 10 grams a day. I think the dose should be increased to 10 grams a day for everybody.
Sure.
Personally. So don't mean to.
You always are going to go higher on everything.
Well, I want the brain.
No, I know.
Right? I want the brain effect.
But here's the point. So like creatine is a perfect example of something we stayed away from decades.
Yeah, right.
So you and I have been taking creatine forever, right? But now the research on the Alzheimer's side of things, and sarcopenia, et cetera, it's changed, and it's a little bit of marketing too. The point is the research is catching up. And now as a company that focuses on the clinical channel, we're like, well, there's some utility here. Let's offer this to our clinicians. Now, when you get into that space and you realize, okay, so like we identify a raw material that is probably the foremost known raw material in the marketplace. And we say, hey, we want that one. Let's bring it in. Let's test it. Well, number one, it's extremely gritty. It doesn't mix very well. Number two, it's not as pure as we think it is. And number three, it has higher levels of what we call DCD, which is like dicyanamide or something like that. It's kind of the organic chemistry name of it than we want. So you're able to say, this is the most popular brand out there. Let's bring it in. Let's take a look at it. And we decided not to use it. Conversely, we bring one in, the one we're using, 99.9% purity. It is, you can say it's micronized.
Yeah.
It's micronized.
It's not granular.
It's not granular. It mixes really well because that matters in terms of compliance for a patient, right?
Yeah.
But then the other side of that has the lowest amounts of DCD we found. And what DCD is, it's kind of like an organic chemical that it's kind of a proxy for quality of manufacturing.
Okay.
So if the quality of manufacturing is poor, the creatine will have higher amounts of it in it because it means they're not cleaning their machines more. It's kind of like a residue, if you will.
Okay.
So it's something you can look for in that space to identify the quality of the raw material. But the point is even the things you think are good because they're out there, we do the due diligence. We take a look at them and we break it down, and we're trying to deliver something at the utmost efficacy and utmost quality that we possibly can at a reasonable price, a price that doesn't break the bank, but gets an outcome.
I think the price is almost too inexpensive. Like, right? I mean, I looked at it, I was like, are you kidding me? Because we were buying another product and it was a great product, but the price difference for the amount. I mean, you're getting almost twice the amount for a similar price,
Yeah.
right? And a
And
great
just so
quality
you know, I
product.
can send you this too, but we do test for anabolic steroids in there, SARMs, all the things.
Oh wow.
So we have a laundry list of things that are undetectable in that raw material. So we're thinking about that too, and we're testing it for our clinicians that many of them work with professional athletes. We're just not NSF certifying it for sport, which requires you to run that on every single lot.
Okay.
Unequivocally on
Regardless,
every
yeah.
lot. And I can just tell you, it adds up significant amount to the unit cost.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we won't do it in the future. It's just not the space that we functioned in.
Or maybe just have a line for that,
Right.
that does cost a little bit more.
That's right.
Right. I know when you were talking about the brand name raw material, the one that came to mind for me that you guys use is Mobility for the
So for the joints,
for the joints.
for the skin,
yeah.
oral
It's-
hyaluronic
it's
acid.
it's the
Yeah.
collagen product, right? Because there's a lot of collagen products out there, and I think the micronization of that collagen absolutely affects the absorption. If it's too big of a molecule, it's just a protein source
That's right.
versus being able to absorb and get in. And I remember because when we talked about it, you'd sent me the study that showed, I think it was collegiate athletes, they put on 1 millimeter of cartilage in the knee joint, right? For through
that
MRI after a
takes time.
year of use.
Yeah, it takes time. It's a foundation building block, right? For the joint spacing. But yes, I mean, we combine Mobility, which is oral hyaluronic acid, Fortigel, which is a type 1 and 3 collagen, and then something called Pendoaxium, which is mucopolysaccharides, vitamin C, and type 1 collagen. The point is it's comprehensive. It has collectively about 20 plus human clinical trials attached to it. But yes, the sweet spot with the science with collagen is that ultimately collagen needs to be ingested and absorbed almost fully intact. And in order to do that, it needs to get pulled through the gut lumen when you ingest it, and it needs to attach in the into extracellular matrix rather to a collagen receptor site. So in order to do that, it needs to be small enough. And we typically say below 10 kilodaltons. And ours functions around 1.5 to 3 kilodaltons. The vast majority of collagen in the marketplace is like a large protein. It's ground up gelatin.
Right.
And it's running at, let's say, 50 to 300 kilodaltons.
So it's useless.
So it can be used, not totally useless because it's going to be a very weak protein source.
Right.
But the point is like people are dosing it high. They're using it as like a protein source, and it has a very weak amino acid complex. It's not ideal for a protein.
Right.
But the way we use it is more specialty for skin elasticity, wrinkle depth, and sort of skin moisture, but also the building blocks for joints.
Maybe that's why my skin looks so good. I take it from my joints, So, and then the other thing, and all of this stuff I've learned through Jeremy over the years. So, because I had patients and myself are saying, well, what about, oh, no, I can't remember the name of it, but the natural statin.
Oh, bergamot?
No. Red rice yeast.
Oh, red yeast rice.
Red yeast rice.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, because we had talked about that, and you're like, you're talking about testing raw materials. As the company that buys it, you can't test for it, right?
That's correct.
Because then it becomes a drug, and the FDA wants to regulate it as a drug, as a statin, right?
That's
so where does the testing in that come from? I remember, but I let you talk about it.
Well, it's been a while since I've revisited that topic because it was a hot topic for a while. But at the end of the day, the rubber meets the road where the FDA has deemed red yeast rice to be a drug.
Okay.
So that's where it starts. So they deem it as a drug. It doesn't mean you can't find it in the marketplace. Let's go back to the free market. It's a free market. The problem is that because it has active monocolin K in it, which is basically the active component of a statin, you can't test for that. And if you test for it and identify the amount in there,
then it's a drug.
Then it's a drug, and you can't market it a certain way. You can't release it a certain way. So what people do is sort of like bring it in, and they're able to distribute it as a dietary supplement, but they kind of like don't ask, don't tell. So the problem with that is, again, I'm not trying to scare anybody,
but
because it can still work.
The different amounts
right.
for different lots.
That's
right. So one may have 50 milligrams and another one may have 10 milligrams. And at 50 milligrams, it controlled your cholesterol, but at 10, it didn't. And you were like, oh, what happened?
So yeah, that's the problem with that. And that's why we've never entered into that marketplace, because we can't do the things we want to do. And I always say this to a clinician, which is like, if you were going to recommend a 10 milligram statin, you wouldn't recommend a 10 one day and then a 20 the next day and then a 10 the next day and a 15 the next. The point is you recommend a 10.
Right.
And at least in the drug world, like there's quality measures in place to ensure that that's what it is. So the problem with that space is that you don't kind of really know what you're getting. And so again, another example where we take a step back. We just say, we're not going to involve ourselves in it. We're going to build our foundation strong, not on a house of sand, if you will. And we've done that in other industries too. We've decided not to participate. We never participated early on in CBD for the same reason, because the regulatory market was filling itself out. Most recently, NMN was sort of ruled to be now a safe dietary supplement, but there was some regulatory issues around it for forever from the FDA. And so again, we don't choose to participate, even though we could sell a bunch of it,
Right.
because we don't want to, create a good product, get it out there in the marketplace, and then the FDA says, oh, this is a drug now, you can't do this anymore. And we don't build our business that way. So the reality is, what people know us for is, we're a science-based company. We do things the right way, super high quality. We're reliable. We're conservative in the marketplace in the sense of we're not concerned about, we always know we can pull another lever to sell more product, but we really want to create efficacious products that are going to help a doctor help their patient, optimize, biohack, but also get better if they're chronically ill.
Well, yeah.
And we've done that over the course of 30 plus years.
I've used your products a lot for what I call integrative medicine. So instead of reaching for the prescription pad, I use a nutraceutical to achieve nearly the same end result. And psychologically, patients like that, because I explain to them, well, I don't want to take pills. Yeah, but this is a supplement that's, it's high quality versus a patented pharmaceutical drug.
Sure.
So in my way of thinking, it's kind of giving the body what it's missing and allowing it to do the job it's intended to do, rather than relying on a drug.
Yeah.
Per se.
We have some language around this too, which is like, we are huge advocates of lifestyle interventions, right? You have lifestyle therapies, go get some sun, right?
Yeah.
Hey, be a part of a community. You get, whatever, you get your oxytocin that way. You get all these signals from the world, right? Then you have lifestyle interventions, right? So like, hey, eat better, exercise is a lifestyle intervention. And then what we feel like we come in as this augmented intervention, which is like a bridge between all the things you're doing here, but you can't quite get to where you want to get. And then the last part of that is drug intervention, is rescue intervention. So we feel like we fall right between that in this space because we're working with clinicians.
Yeah. So you folks are noticing that we're kind of shying away from saying the name of the company that Jeremy works for. So I want to see if maybe they'll sponsor the podcast, and then we'll blow them up. But, needless to say, and I think this is important, that the company that he works for, they don't sell to the general public. They only sell to licensed clinicians. And in that, they have an arm of the business that's out there reconnoitering the internet to try to find their products that are either being counterfeit or sold going against the contract, right, in the general public. But I was just talking, we have on our website, we have where you can order your supplements, and we have a contract with FullScript, and these products can be obtained on FullScript, but our office has to authorize you, the end buyer, to be able to purchase the products. Right. So I thought that was a brilliant move, though.
Yeah. It's just something, again, when you're convicted about the model the trusted partner you work with, the model you serve, we're unapologetic about, like, we're not just here to grow business, right? We could do that in many different ways. What I would mention is this an important thing for your viewership and your patients is that, I know that I buy a million things from Amazon, right? There's an Amazon truck in my house every day.
Yeah, but so you won't buy your supplements or your drugs.
The allure to buy supplements on Amazon is high. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, but we have one active lawsuits, and we have multiple lawsuits pending against counterfeiters. So this is a fact, right? Like, not to mention the efficacy of a product can go down because it's not warehoused correctly. The fact is, there are people in other countries primarily, but not always, sometimes here, that slap their label that looks like our label on a product because we have a demand for our products. And so this is a real fact. And fortunately, when we were able to buy those products and test them, one of them just had water in it. So it was a liquid vitamin D, water. That's the best case scenario, but you don't know what the heck's in some of this stuff.
Yeah,
So
I tell patients that all the time.
Buyer beware is what I'm saying. Just be careful.
Jeremy won't say it. I'm not politically correct, but one of China's biggest exports is counterfeit stuff. So, and I'll tell you, this is something I just found out the other day with one of my patients. I'm looking in her labs. I'm like, your homocysteine level's going through the roof. Are you taking the cardio B? She's like, yeah, I've been taking the cardio B. And I'm doing the Zoom consult, and she goes, yeah, and she pulls out a bottle. I know what cardio B bottle looks like, and pulls a bottle out. And there's a product out there by another company that they call cardio B. And she went and bought, because I told her take cardio B, and it had some, things in it, but like ashwagandha or something like that. But it didn't have trimethylglycine, methyl tetrahydrofolate, and methyl.
Yeah, B6, B12.
Methylcobalamin. So I was like, aha, well, you were right. You are taking cardio B, but not the proper one. And I wanted to share that with you anyway, because it just reminded me, like, to this point. Now this is a company here that is a different nutraceutical. It doesn't try to say it's your company, but they have the exact same name for a product. I'm like,
I don't think we've trademarked that name.
Yeah.
So been a long time. That product's been around a long time. But to the point of happens probably more often than you think, which is good intentions. Patients are wanting to do what you want them to do, but they don't. It's a very noisy world, right? It's hard to discern what's good or bad, and people need guidance, and that's why you're here, is to provide that guidance.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know what they paid for it, but we give them a very fair price for the things that we sell out of the office. But because the product is tested so much, it is a little more costly than what you're going to find on the shelves of GNC,
Sure,
or at Walgreens or something, or even on Amazon. And then when you find the real price, it's funny, because when you find the real product on Amazon, some of the times the price is significantly higher than, because they had to pay for it and they're trying to make a little bit of money.
Well, that's an active battle. We have a compliance team. We're fighting that. We microchip all of our bottles. You know that.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So the bottom line is, we do have an active compliance policy. And again, it's just more of a business decision, where we want to service this channel. And the only way we can do it is to control our brand. And when you get on Amazon, some people have decided that that's where they want to sell their products. We've decided we don't. And then it's just a battle. It's a constant fight, because when you have a brand that's of interest and people want to buy it and there's a demand for it, the Amazon gods will come out, and the scavengers, if you will, and they'll try to get their hands on your product, and they'll do it in any way necessary. And then again, that's the simple part of it. The more egregious part is the ones that are actually counterfeiting with stuff you have no idea what you're putting in your bodies.
Yeah. So, well, I know you have a heart out. I think we need to
on a plane.
We need to do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
Please, if you guys have questions for Jeremy, you have different things that you want to know about the supplement industry, he is a wealth of knowledge. We can talk about particular products, not maybe as brand names, but as the raw ingredients or something, and kind of go from there. But man, I really appreciate you taking the time to come in and share your knowledge, because this industry so well. You've been in it forever, and and I'll just say that the way you got to be a professional athlete was your determination, and when you put your name to something, you give it 1,000%, and it shows in the years I've been dealing with you in this industry, because I've learned so much, and I like to learn, and I read, and I think I know it, and I talk to you and I go, I don't know shit.
It's because you're treating patients all day. I'm working in this space. So yeah, you become a master at something over the course of time. Right. So yeah, I appreciate that. I'm always happy to chop it up and hang out and talk about other things.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you for your time.
Of course. Thank you, doctor.
Thanks, folks. And again, give us a like and give us some questions if you have them. Thank you.